Start the recording. Here we go. So I'd like to just go through a few things first, kind of how I'd like to approach today, and then get your feedback on if that works or not. We could always change it on the fly or change it at the beginning. But basically, I'm going to go over the purpose and need for the committee. We do have a couple people watching, but just kind of to make sure that all your decisions are based on your charter that you and the House Bill 899. So we're going to make sure that all your decisions are grounded in the charter and the bill that formed this group. I figured then we could go over the survey for the shooting clubs. I've gotten a couple emails, and I think Senator Fuller's representing. They thought that that document that we had on our website for the task force represented all of the clubs, and that is not the case. Those were only the clubs that we heard back from and had some data on. So we realized that we will be reaching out to more clubs than what's on that sheet, and I just want to acknowledge that. But we'll go over the survey for the clubs. I combined, and I'll be sharing my screen. I combined what Seth sent us and what Renee and Sam refined that the survey to be after the last meeting, and I combined both of those into one so we could look at one. Then we'd go over the individual shooters survey. I figured if there's any public comment, we could get some public comment at that point after you've had your discussions on the surveys. And then hopefully get those surveys tied into as close as possible. And I'm saying as close as possible because we do want to turn them, we want to share them with our human dimensions guy who specializes in wording of surveys. So we want to make sure that we're going to get the answers that we're seeking in the surveys. So we're going to get it as close as possible before turning it into them, turning it over to him. And then also I'd like to discuss any recommendations that this group might have to the PR subcommittee, which is meeting on Thursday to talk about how to share the survey, where to share it, who to share it with, and how to get the biggest bang for the buck for you guys to maximize the responses. So if you have any recommendations to that group that's meeting on Thursday, being chaired by, who's it being chaired by? Representative Sprunger. I'll bring those recommendations to them. Anything to add or anything about that that doesn't work for you guys?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I just wanted to share, I'm going to share my screen really quick. I know you guys have seen this, but I still would like to, I'm gonna likely bring, start each meeting with this just to ground us in what you are being asked to do by that bill. And I'm trying to share my screen and I have way too many. Okay. So this is your charter. Let me know. It's going a little slow. I might turn off my video actually. But can you see the charter?
Yeah.
Okay. So purpose and need, you were formed because of House Bill 899, and it's to identify shooting facility needs in Montana, and this includes improving facilities as well as perhaps developing new facilities. And also the charter, and I'm sorry if this is going to go a little too fast for you guys, but also in the charter, you talked about specific assignments and expected products. And you developed this charter to develop a framework to select locations for Montana state shooting facilities and improvements, to review facilities in the Mountain West and evaluate existing Montana facilities, and also develop any a request for proposals so that local governments and entities could apply for funds. Um, and all I want to add here is be mindful of the questions that you're asking in order to help you meet your needs and your purpose. So try to make sure those questions are formulated in a way that gives you the information that you need to move forward. And one last thing is FWP, and I'll stop sharing now. FWP has a long history, as I'm sure you guys know, um, of developing surveys and sharing surveys. And I'm trying to stop sharing. I don't know if this is working or not. There we go. Um, FWP has a long history of sending out surveys for a variety of things. I'm sure that you guys have received surveys from us on hunting or your opinion on things. And we know that shorter is the better, um, as you can imagine. So just be mindful of the length of this. Make sure you're drilling into the information that you really, really need to get at to help you serve your purpose and develop the recommendations that you need to develop. And that's all I'm going to say. Those are just my recommendations to you. And now I guess maybe I'll turn it over to Seth as chair of this, and I will share that my screen, Seth, so you don't have to, and you could just talk us through this. And Renee and Sam, please jump in as you need to. I'm gonna pull up this survey here. Give me 1 second, sorry. And if you want to start, Seth, by talking while I try to dig up this survey, please do.
Sure. And you're doing the club survey. Well, I'll go off what you had. So I had
Yeah, I'm gonna
sent out,
the club survey.
okay, we'll start with the club. I had sent out a couple surveys, one for individual shooters and one for the club. The one that I did was based off of the one that we got a few days ago from Deb. And then I had annotated the new areas in that. So this one's maybe a little more than we might need, but it was aimed at trying to capture as accurate of data as we could and try and get our arms around, what's available and where it is, and then what growth areas might be there in terms of people, and then needs for expansion or growth. So if everyone had a chance to kind of look through that, uh, the way that I think, keeping in mind what Deb was just saying about the shorter the better, I think the one thing about these surveys that gives us a little bit more motivation for people to fill them out is that there's a funding mechanism or system on the backside of this, which um, if you're a club and you would like funding, this is a good way to sort of get your foot in the door and to start shaping what that need might look like. So I think contrary to some of the opinions where you're really not getting anything out of it, I think this is a mechanism for clubs to potentially get funding for some of their wish list. So that's why I made it a little more wide ranging than I might have to get feedback in all of these areas. But I guess I'll turn it over. I don't know if anyone had any questions, additions. I'm sure I missed something. If we wanted to dial this back a little bit, we could. But yeah, this was my first crack at it.
And Seth, would you like me to just, I mean, basically go through the questions and get thumbs up from people or get input from people? Is
Sure,
that
we can. Yeah, if you want to just scroll, we can just go point by point. And just solicit feedback. Try and not take too much time because we'll be here a while. But yeah, I think we can just start at number one and work through and then see what we have for feedback. The one thing I thought about with number one to make this easier is maybe it could be based off the numbers that we saw, it could be a range. How many people use it? Is it 1,000, 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000, whatever, so that they can just click it versus people having to sort of think about it. It's more of an estimate. But we can start with number one. If everyone's good, we'll just move on. If there's feedback, then we can make adjustments.
Yeah, I just like what you said, Seth. This is Rich. I think that's a good idea. Make it simple for people, give them a range.
Okay, so maybe do like I think I was gonna go look back on some of the ranges that had gotten back to us about usage. I want to say the top end was 11 or 13,000 I think was the range. So maybe if we did say 4 or 5 ranges like 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 5,000, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, I don't know, just to try and get a number.
What we can do, we can send this out after we incorporate everybody's input today, and I could send it out for one last review with
Okay,
those ranges based on what we've received. Would that work for you?
that sounds good.
Hey, and this is Renee. Seth, as you were running through those numbers, I pulled up the data we had already gotten from ranges, and that's right in line with those numbers. So I think you're on the right track.
Okay, cool. All
Okay.
right.
Well, I'll ask the same question. This is Mitch. I'll ask the same question I asked before, and it continues to sort of buff, buffalo me a little bit. When we talk about how many people use your range, uh, we don't talk about shooter days. We just talk about people. And if I'm a person that goes to the range twice in a year, I get counted just the same as a person that goes to the range every evening. Uh,
Gotcha. That's a good question.
how are we getting around that?
So maybe we should define what we're asking and say, range visits, days, define that as a person, one person per day. So say, I mean, it probably it's a data point that drives if you're using it once a day or using it 100 times or once a year, 100 times a year. So we probably should do shooter days. How many shooters used it for one day per year, or define that, draw that out so it's clear what we're asking. How many people came through the gate in a year?
Yeah, I mean, I like that better, Seth, but I do recall that there was some discussion about that might create confusion. Uh, I don't think it would, but I'd love to hear somebody reiterate that a little bit.
I
But
think
couldn't
Renee
you?
had
Yeah,
a response to that.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
jump in here. I think just based on conversations we have with clubs, which are often made up of volunteers, just wanting to be clear. So I think if we use shooter days, that would be okay as long as we define it.
I'd feel much better about the response if we did that.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can do that. We'll change that.
Yeah, I think just how many people, we can reword that, but basically how many shooter days would you estimate that your shooting facility uses, which is defined as one shooter for one day, or each
Mhm.
individual visit per person per day, so that that's
Mhm.
clear spelled out.
Yep, we can do that.
Awesome. All right, any more on one? All right, moving on to two. I think this was aimed at the growth, if clubs are utilized at capacity, under capacity, over capacity. So I think this is going to be another, I think it's pretty straightforward. If people feel like there's no one ever there, or if people feel like they never can shoot, that's probably a good data point from the range perspective. Everybody good with that one? All right, we'll move on to number three. Um, and we can make this kind of any time frame. The past 5 years seems like a good one because that's been a lot of our population growth, I feel like, has happened in the last kind of 3 to 5 years. So if there is a growth period, that's probably enough data to give us a curve, but not so long that people can't really remember, and should give us an idea of the trend line for these ranges. So everybody good with three? All right. Number four, I think that's kind of self-explanatory, indoor, outdoor, both. Um,
And
everybody
I just made some
good.
highlights in here that were a little bit changed from the original survey that you saw. It doesn't mean anything. I just wanted to highlight the changes. So here, I think we had shotgun. I forgot what the actual word was, but you broke it out, and I just wanted to highlight that.
I think you had shotgun range.
Yeah, maybe.
I broke that out a little bit because I think it's a different clientele. If it's
Mhm.
a shotgun trap, there's a lot of trap clubs that all they shoot is trap. That's it. They're a one kind of deal. Skeet is a little bit, I think, underrepresented. There's not as much skeet in Montana. And then sporting clays, I think, is usually designed around a larger facility with walking trails and that sort of thing. So that was aimed at getting an idea of what kind of shotgun these clubs might be offering, or if it's all of the above. And
I like I like the way you did that.
I did the same
And
thing with rifle ranges to try and break it out. 300 or less is probably your average range. You know, it's a sight-in range. Maybe you can reach out a little bit. 3 to 500 is kind of getting into long range, and then everything over 500 is, I would consider it to be kind of a long range. And we can play with those numbers a little bit, but once again, it's aimed at just getting an idea of what these facilities are catering to. And then when we go into the individual, it kind of we should hopefully get an overlay of what the clubs offer versus what individuals are asking for. So I tried to keep the language similar between the two so that we could have a cross reference.
Seth,
Is there,
for the
go
same
ahead.
reasons, I would suggest the a breakout of archery ranges, static ranges versus walking ranges. Uh,
Okay.
that might be, I don't know what the right terminology might be, but I'd say static and walking ranges or
static
3D.
and what?
Walking
Say,
ranges, archery
yeah, maybe
range is static, archery range is walking.
or a flat range, you know, fixed yardage range
Yeah.
or walking trails, or I could do a little research on that, how the clubs
Yeah.
define that, but
So you'd have two blocks for archery, one static, one walking.
Okay. I'll finesse this and or with South's help, and we'll get it out to everybody.
Yeah, Sam, you may have some input on what they call those ranges.
Yeah, it's kind of varied. Generally, like 3D ranges refer to your description of like a walking range. Um, yeah, static range is just going to be your set distances, kind of in that confined area or environment.
Yeah.
So I have a question, Seth.
yep.
This is really good at this point. Um, with archery ranges. So is there any, and Sam, you might answer this question, is there any conflict between regular archery and let's say crossbows? Because I know we've seen some friction when it comes to the issue in the legislature. Would there be a
I don't
necessity of separating these out, or would you consider them all the same within the same archery range category?
I would think that they would be roughly the same. There are some targets that won't support the increased velocities or whatever crossbows are not crossbow rated targets. I don't know that we have enough crossbow, even archery in general. It's pretty easy just to shoot in your backyard. You can put a target up in town and shoot. I think the archery, the reason I didn't break it out a lot is I don't know how much I don't know how much need there is to break out archery specific, or if it's just meeting the need. I do think breaking out a flat range, just sort of a sight in and a walking trail is a good because that gives us an idea of what we're looking at. But I think
Just a thought.
archery can be served pretty well shooting in the backyard. So versus you can't go shoot your rifle in the backyard in most places. So
And Willis, my input on your question is that the most of the targets that clubs are using nowadays are capable of handling the higher velocity. That was an issue. The issue Seth raised about different velocities for targets was an issue that came up way early in the crossbow development time frame when there was a lot of people that were just anti-crossbows and were looking for any reason to say no. I don't see a reason to really break that out. in this survey. I would just say archery, but there is certainly a difference in just a place to stand and shoot 30, 40, 60 yards and a place to actually have sort of like a walking experience where you're walking through and targets are at different ranges at different locations.
So what I'm hearing is we probably
Don't
don't
think we
need to
need
break out
crossbows.
crossbows. Okay.
And I think just to put a bow on it, I think we could say for archery ranges, we could say, a static flat range, and we could say a walking or trail type range. And I think
Yep,
that would probably give people everything that, they would need to select that.
I agree.
Okay. We moving on to 6?
6, and we could kind of look back at 5, but there were a couple things I added. And there's kind of a growing demand, I think, for, they call them tactical games, or sort of a think CrossFit with guns kind of matches where it's a dynamic environment where people are moving around more, or maybe moving bay to bay. So I had added on 6, which was disciplines you'd like to add, tactical practical shooting bays, which could be rifle or pistol. Generally, they're more pistol, but they could be rifle. And then there was some questions looking through the industry of like youth or beginner focused shooting areas, if it could be more of a hands-on, newbie space. So, there are people that aren't familiar with guns or have an area to kind of go where they can be comfortable and not feel like they're holding everybody up. I'm not super tied to that, but those were just a couple ideas that came up, so I figured I'd add them.
Seth,
Any
question, you might know more about this. I know you know more about it than I do. I know at some of the places, some of the larger ranges I've heard people refer to them as like cowboy shooting ranges. And is that the same things you're talking about there?
Somewhat it could be. That was another thing that I thought about adding. Is there are, cowboy action. It's kind of specific. A lot of times I'll set up props, houses, sort of a frontier street, and then people are moving through and shooting. That is something we could add to an existing shooting discipline, potentially on 5. That's probably worth adding, cowboy action or a cowboy action range. I'd be fine with adding that. It might help.
Okay. And
Is that
one other thing on before I give up the microphone here, the uh, virtual shooting ranges or indoor virtual ranges, those kind of things. I see
Mhm.
those popping up around the country in different places.
Yeah, and that's something we could look into. I know that the Law Enforcement Academy has a range like that. I believe there's a range in Bozeman that does some of that as well, kind of the virtual, and some of them are live fire virtual ranges. I didn't get into that just because they're fairly specific, and usually that's more of a commercial venture. It's a pay to play. It's
Yeah,
it's less of it's more of a training. So I wasn't sure how far into those veins we wanted to go. Um, that was just kind of my thoughts while I left that off, but I would be okay with adding that. I think you're only going to see it at a couple of indoor ranges. That is
do we,
something I think we could add to the individual surveys to see if there's a strong desire for that in more places. But
yeah,
in general, it's expensive and it has to be managed very carefully. So it's more of a commercial venture.
I agree on the commercial venture. Maybe it just falls under other then and let it go. Somebody may want to write it in if they've got that and it's a big part of their income. They might want to put it down there. But, all right.
Okay, so I'm hearing leave it out here. Maybe we'll add it to the other survey, but also there's an option to write in if they want to add
Yep,
it. Okay.
sounds good. And
Okay.
then, yeah, you had added cowboy to number 5 and to number 6.
Yep. I'm gonna add those in.
Perfect. I think that's good. The amenities, I tried to break out kind of everything that could really be on a wish list. I had added, I think buildings and indoor storage was also one that I added. And then covered firing lines is probably something that you could break out as a amenity. That seems to be a pretty common one, so I figured I'd add that to the list.
How about lead and air quality systems?
I think for the indoor, we that probably is not a bad idea. Filtration system in indoor range filtration systems.
And lead collection.
Yeah, and lead collection.
I just, excuse me, Seth, I just want to emphasize that covered firing lines might be a very important request because of the ability to control the where the firing goes, you know,
Right.
in
Yeah,
terms.
I know a lot of ranges use coverings and sort of standoffs to prevent muzzle rise. So if you've got something that's ahead of you know, it basically keeps you from putting your gun too high in the air, so it can limit your or help limit your, you know, where you're flagging essentially.
Exactly. So that I think that's an important addition you made.
Agree.
Filtration. You may want to clarify air filtration system, I think, on that one. Okay, sounds good.
And then I assume that I'll add that to number 8 as well. The
Uh,
air filtration
yeah,
and lead collection, since it should mirror each other.
I think so. Yeah, we could probably have 7 and 8 mirror. Some of them are, well, I guess it's sort of an because the idea was that I figured that pretty much every range would have a berms, barrier, signage, etc. Like it's pretty hard to have a range without that, but I think it'd be fine just to have them mirror.
I'm sorry, Seth, I couldn't unmute fast enough. What did you want me to add to this one?
You could just have 9, 8, 7, and 8 mirror in
Oh,
terms
okay,
of
okay,
what
that's what I
they're
thought.
asking. What do
Okay,
you have and what would you like to
okay,
add?
okay. Can we move on to 9?
Yeah,
Oh,
9 was
I didn't.
essentially open-ended. If we missed something,
Yep.
they have the chance to write that in there. I think that's where, you know, indoor range, interactive, pretty much anything that a club was wanting could be filled in there.
Hmm.
Seth, what about the connection or having on-site um, I guess commercial sales?
Oh, and like a pro shop
Yeah,
or
pro shop, ammunition, arrows, all that kind of stuff. Is that worth
that,
asking?
I think it might be. Um, I think it might be. I think we could add that to 7 and 8. Pro shop maybe,
Yeah,
or that's probably the best way of sort of encompassing that.
I think you're right.
All right, 9, 10. This is sort of a follow-on, but I think it goes to if there's something sort of specific that is a safety issue or a development project, that's kind of good to know. I don't know if we're going to get much on that, but if there's a safety related upgrade, I think most people would probably take care of it, but this might give us something that we missed. So I threw that in there. Um, I wanted to get at the funding a little bit just to see if clubs are sort of an all volunteer, if they're getting funding, if they've taken in grants, if they've gotten FWP money or NRA money, USSF money before, to kind of see who's been going after that. I don't know if there was anything else we wanted to add to the funding construction upgrades.
Seth, could I ask a question here? Are
Sure,
all of the clubs in Montana on DNRC land?
they are not. I think a few of the FWP are. My intention for this is that this would go to or be applicable to anyone that has any shooting range, whether it's chartered, official, private. I mean, everything from, Billings Rod and Gun Club all the way to somebody put together a covered range in their backyard and they would like to expand it. I'm just trying to get um, anyone that's got a range that people can shoot at and it's somewhat open to the public. I don't know. I was going to try and remember if I clarified that, but I think it's just an overview of ranges that are accessible to people that shoot in Montana.
Okay. The reason why I asked that question was that two clubs in this area that are on DNRC land have disincentives to building improvements, infrastructure improvements, because the leases that they get every 10, lease fees every 10 years are based on the value of the property. And so I see a disincentive to uh, continue to develop infrastructure because of that.
So that actually might raise a good point that we could add. I don't know if it's an amenity. Adding something to do with lease guarantees, if it's state or federal, that might be something that would be worth looking at. Um, I
And
think
uh,
that would maybe go in eight. Well, would that go under amenities potentially? Well, not really. I'll keep that in mind as we work through this, and maybe we can find somewhere to put that.
Yeah, it might be another question on here, thinking about at the bottom when you ask where your range is located, maybe we ask, is it, private land? Is it public land leased? And we could get at it there,
So I'd looked
perhaps.
at a question, and I'm trying to remember where I moved stuff around. If we had a type of range, which would probably be a really good question. And I don't know that I added that in. And maybe that would be something closer to the front in the first few questions of what type of range is it public? Is it a public range, private range? I had that, I think, in my individual. So number three on the individual was established shooting range, public or private, private land, public land. We may want to add a question towards the beginning of range type, whether that's a um, privately owned, publicly owned, but leased. I'll have to give that a little bit of thought, but I think we could come up with a list of whether it's a leased state-owned or publicly owned property that's leased, whether it's privately owned property that's leased, private owned, and then, the is it that could kind of go into the is it a chartered range, is it an organization, established range, etc. And give that a
All
little
right.
bit of thought.
I'll
But I
just
think,
say we'll wordsmith this. We'll look at that other question when we get to that survey, and maybe that could help us fill this one out. But
yep, I think
certainly
that's a good question.
Well,
after,
and maybe
yeah,
if I could break in here, you guys, I'm just thinking,
go for it.
what what is the information that you want to get through this question? I was hearing Senator Fuller trying to get to if they have if they have to pay a high amount for their lease, kind of trying to understand what their expenses are.
So we have so maybe in number 11, this might be a way of getting to this. Maybe we could add leases or land cost to that because we have how's your club currently fund construction upgrades and ongoing um, maybe it's how has your club funded. We could play with that, but I think we could add lease amounts, ongoing liabilities, expand number 11 a little bit.
Um, Let me jump in here. Maybe I'm hearing a little bit different now that Renee brought something up. Senator Furler, are you asking what is maybe preventing a club from expanding?
No, I'm not preventing a club from expanding, but I'll just give you an example. One of the clubs in this area, their lease is due next year, and their fees have gone from less than $12,000 to over 40 because of and they are in a quandary, and they were told that it's based on the infrastructure value of the property, and they have been said that that's a disincentive
Yeah,
uh, to improve the quality of the range. So I'm looking at question number
yeah.
11. How does your club currently fund construction upgrades and ongoing maintenance? To maybe we want to include the leasing arrangements. How does your club currently fund lease arrangements? I mean, so whatever. But if there's a disincentive, if the DNRC and they may have by legislation required to do certain things but a four times or over three times the price of a lease is going to seriously degrade the ability to do other things.
No, that's a good point. As far as what we do to address this, I thought we were on a good track when we first moved up to the beginning of this. But I wanted to ask a question: is this survey going to be submitted anonymously by the responder? So we're going to know where it's coming from. We're going to know all of that. Okay. Then I think a good opening question would be, is your range on, private land, federal land, state land, lease land?
Yeah.
And as just a good introductory question, then it sort of opens the door for where I think John's heading, and that's a good comment, a good concern. I think opens door for that really. And then I was going to say you could at least get them to give you the zip code that they were in, so you know roughly where they are. But if you know where the club is, if you got all that information, then you're in good shape.
Yeah.
So I think this question here up above is important to this group. I'm not sure it still gets at exactly what Senator Fuller was getting at.
You're right.
Yeah, I think there should be a question that basically states, are there any government related issues or inhibitions to your range's success? Or is there anything and that could encompass, lease agreements, longevity, taxes, um, is there anything
Liability insurance.
that the state, yeah, insurance, where the state has the ability to affect an outcome? So maybe government, are there any government issues that could be addressed, or any issues that you have that need to be addressed through, government intervention or something along those lines? And I was looking to see what else we might have for questions, but
I think you're in the right place on where to put this, Devin. I'd say what are your top concerns related to range management and and development? And you could put in parentheses there insurance, lease cost, and let them lay it out there.
regulation.
Yeah, regulations. Yeah.
So, kind of along this line, today at lunch, I met with some folks, a number of folks, and one of the things that came up is that in Ravalli County, the Trap Club is located on airport property, which is managed by the
Um,
county.
yeah.
And the county wants to um, have the Trap Club move because they want to use the land for airplane hangars.
Mhm.
So, and right now, the club is desperately looking for some place to move. And of course, if you've been to Valley County, that might be a little difficult. So I'm wondering, um, do we want to put a new question, or tie into this a question about, what other environmental factors are going to maybe keep you or prevent you from continuing at this location? And I know here in Missoula that the way the county is moving its development, the Trap and Skeet Club here, no doubt in maybe 5, 10 years is going to feel the same pressure.
So maybe what we can do is make this a broader question, and it can essentially be open-ended to be, is there anything that is inhibiting your ability to continue operation or grow? And then that would allow, a fill in the blank. Yeah, my taxes went up by $30,000. The airport's kicking me out. I need land. Um, I can't get a permit to do expansion. And that way, that would catch anything that's sort of a problem for any of these ranges across the board. And it's not limited to any specific thing. And then we can just sort of take those on a one-off basis. I think those are good things to know, in that the real heart of the question is are these clubs going to be able to are they meeting a current need, and are they going to be able to continue to grow to meet future needs? And so if that question should get to the heart of what we're really trying to ask. And I think to Deb's point, that's a good thing to think about. I think what we're really trying to get at is what's available and how in for now, and then where do we need to grow? And so I think that question um, that might get to the heart of answering some of those.
Does this capture, I mean, I'm going to wordsmith a little bit better, but is this basically what you were getting at?
That's basically what I was getting at. Yeah, Seth nailed it there. Uh, that and I think it's important that the next legislature look at if there is a common theme here of something that the next legislature could cure. They might jump on it.
Yep.
Deb, the only you captured the word opportunity, and I think Seth said ability.
And I didn't unmute. Seth
Yeah,
said
if you have is inhibiting your range's ability.
ability.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There we go.
thank you.
Yeah, and I think, looking at it, we could probably even get rid of number 10. I think if there's a safety related upgrade, that would fall under something specific, berms.
So, Seth, since we're talking about safety related, I do have another question.
Yeah.
So, how often, especially at outdoor ranges, has live fire resulted in starting a fire?
That's a good question. I know our local range has a policy where if we hit a certain fire danger stage, they shut the range down. But I don't have an answer to that in terms of if there's been
It,
fires started at a range.
I think maybe one of the things we should include there is if we do focus on the safety or move another direction that on it, that we should say something about
Fire mitigation
fire
or
mitigation. Yep.
okay. Yeah, we could add that to 7 and 8 probably, or maybe 8, probably both. Yeah, and I was thinking about number 10. I think someone could add in if there's a maintenance or development project. If it's safety related, I would assume that would be at the top of some list and that would get caught. I don't know that we need to break that out.
I I agree. Just keep it simple, stupid.
Okay. 11, currently funding. Other probably catches anything else. Think that's probably good unless you guys have something on 11. 12, it would be useful, I think, to know if any of these are receiving grant funding, publicly funded grants. Um, 13, I thought about maybe expanding on 13. Um, and maybe there's a follow-on that if yes, then what types of events it might be good to know. So maybe we could to break that out and add in kind of uh, I would say, rifle. I'm trying to think of how to do this without making it super. Maybe we just ask events and then, if yes, what kind?
Explain.
Because I mean, you probably have, I mean, there's shot, all of the types of shooting disciplines apply, and then there's probably multiple types of shooting competitions within that. Um, I think I think if we expand 13, it should be if yes, it should be what kinds and then an estimate of participation. And maybe that question could be, maybe we could expand on number 1 if we wanted to do that, just if we wanted to break out participation for general competition, etc. I don't know if that would work better, but um, I don't know. I think a general number is what I was getting at to keep it simpler. How many people do you hold competitions or events? And then maybe an estimate on number of shooters that attend events on an annual basis.
Seth, could we add their estimate of yes, what kind of estimate of participation, and also whether it's a state level, regional level, or national level competition?
Yeah, I think if we were going to expand that, we could ask, hmm, yeah, I think we could say, and maybe the level of competition, local, state, or national.
Does that work? Just putting it in parentheses there?
I think so. Yeah.
I think I think so too.
I think local, I mean, if you're doing a local turkey shoot, I think that doesn't necessarily, if I don't think that would apply. If you did, I mean, local matches, or I think what we're kind of trying to get at is if there's a draw, but then yeah, I think that's fine. Local, state, national. I'll try and think about how to get at that. If it's maybe it's a multiple check which ones apply if you do local, state, national,
Well, I
or
know
maybe
that,
it's state, regional, or national. Maybe if it's local, if we're trying to get at an economic impact, um,
yeah.
a local match really, I mean, if everyone's just driving from home to shoot the match on a Saturday and then they go home, I don't know that, but there's still the need for the range. So I kind of tried to get at that with number 14 of if you're expanding competitions or matches, if that was sort of a need that they couldn't meet. Otherwise, I think you can kind of get in the weeds of what kind of matches do you host? How big are they? How many people? We could certainly expand on that if we wanted to add another question. If that's just a simple yes, maybe we break it out by level, estimate of number of people. I didn't really know how to get at that, what you guys were thinking for information.
Yeah, Seth, I know that Polson a few years back had a national championship sporting clays competition. And when you remember Senator Mike Taylor,
Yep.
he was big on that. And they never followed up because, or held it again because of infrastructure problems. And they, I think if we'd had this survey out there and more considered interest, uh, I think that, you know, uh, I've had several individuals and board members of some clubs contact me and say, what Montana needs is a destination shooting complex. And I said, well, find me some funding. You know,
Yeah, I think part of what I wanted to do, get through this meeting, kind of dial this in, and then spend, the next few days thinking about the information that we're trying to get to. And I was going to kind of give it some time to ruminate because I do think that one of the things we're trying to get at is economic impact, um, whether or not we should be hosting or have a sort of destination type range. I'm hoping to get some of that information from the individuals. The existing ranges, I don't I don't know how many of them are looking to build themselves into a destination range. There may be some. I think my next question probably needs to be reworded a little bit, in terms of obviously everyone would probably be interested in expanding. Maybe that should be more like have pursued or pursuing, um, expanding, in these areas if funding was available. I think everyone would probably check, yeah, I'm interested. Of course, I'm interested if I can get money to do it. Um, so I think we can work on that a little bit with 14. And then I was thinking we probably would get a lot of that information or some of that information from the shooter surveys of, I wish there was a place where I could go or host a match, or, I went somewhere and shot and then, but we don't have that here. I think the ranges are going to be harder to get at that information, but it's a valid question. So expansion of 13. Anybody else have feedback on how to, I think we can just iterate this a couple times, try and come up with some solutions, and then maybe email it out to the committee and just get some feedback over the next few days.
Seth, what are you hoping to get from this question 14?
Um, I'm trying to break out ranges that are bringing in or hosting events and what kind of events. I think if they list that they have, 10,000 people a year that visit their range, um, and maybe then and how many of those people are coming for a competition? So maybe number one could be a two-part question. How many, or a multi-part question, how many people would you estimate use your shooting facility annually? What number of these people are attending a competition or are using your facilities for a competition?
Is it almost like trying to distinguish those clubs that are aspirational and that they'd love to grow, they have a vision versus the ones they're just happy serving their local community?
Right. And I think there's a need for both. Is it just a club where people go and shoot, or is it a hosting facility? And it would be good to know I mean, I kind of know from just the ranges that I know that most of them do host competitions, but I'm trying to get at where the need is at or where the need is being filled, and then I want to cross reference that with what all the individuals are saying as well. So I think it's both.
Or something like that.
Yep.
We'll wordsmith, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll help. And that'll give us an idea of numbers, and then that'll make it easier as we get down. And if we do all right, yeah, I think that'll work. Could probably be part of 13 too, but
I
Okay.
worry we're getting close to
Yeah, we wouldn't
the
have to have
toleration
that,
point.
I guess, as 13.
yeah, I think we could probably leave that off there.
Okay.
We probably want to do type of event, something along the type, just so we can get at it, or discipline. Maybe we just do discipline, and uh, something that gets at whether it's a state, local, regional level of competition, maybe would be the question.
Um,
So whether it's, pistol, shotgun, rifle, tactical games. And then, yeah, what is the highest level or what level of competition?
is um is that a separate question then, Seth? What level?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to ask
Yeah,
that.
what we could do is start out with, do you have any competitions or events? And then you can set it up so that if they say yes, then a couple more questions will pop up. So then if they say yes, then we could ask, what's the type, and then what's the level.
Yeah. It's kind of a check all that apply, local, state, regional, national kind of thing.
Okay. Yep, we could do that with a series of smart questions, yeah. All right, that'll just remind us to set this up in SurveyMonkey in a certain way.
Yep.
Is there any question tucked away in here that gets to the point of public versus not public, membership only?
That,
Um,
depending on what you're looking for, Mitch, that might be in an individual shooter survey. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm sort of leaning on it from the different ranges. Do you have a public component or is it strictly membership only?
yeah, kind of a demographic question.
Yeah.
Maybe that could go in number one. Um, to try and expand on that, and then range type, and then there could be a demographic question on um, whether or maybe a percentage. I'm trying to think of the best way to get at that. Does your range serve? Maybe it's a checkbox. Do they serve members only? Is it open to the public? I think the way that I did that in the um, shooter survey was if it was an established shooting range, if it's public, private, if it's private land, if it's public use.
Or a mix.
Yeah.
Some might allow public shooting if they purchase a daily membership or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe is it a membership driven? I would think most of them are. If it's an established range that they're going to be membership.
I would think that in order to be open to the walk-in public, they have to have on-duty personnel.
Yeah, fees or
Yeah.
Uh, and other than that, it's membership only, uh, so that they have a private combination key or whatever.
Right.
yeah, maybe that's the best question. Is it membership driven? We can maybe play with that, but basically, do you have to be a member to attend, or is it more of a, private? I think pretty much every built out range facility it's established has some sort of a membership requirement. I'm trying to think of who wouldn't. Maybe that could be
Well,
part of the, what percentage or I don't know how you would get at that. If they're hosting a lot of competitions, then those people probably might not be members. So maybe we can get to that with the competition side. If we're saying how many people are attending competitions, you can kind of draw an inference that those are potentially not members.
I asked the question, because if you're using PR dollars, stuff like that, you got to have a public
Public
component.
component.
That can be just that I have to come in. I can walk in and pay. I don't have to be a lifetime membership of the club or anything like that. I can walk in and pay, and that makes me a public. I think that qualifies. Well,
Yeah.
So do you think going back to, you mentioned earlier, Seth, about um, on-site um, management or somebody who lives at the rifle range or at the shooting range?
Yeah.
Yeah, me a question to ask, how many folks have an on-site manager?
Yeah, maybe a staffing
Yeah.
question. Full-time, part-time, volunteer basis, maybe. So that would be, let's see.
Because I know the one close to my house here has an individual there 5 days a week.
Senator Curdy, are you talking about Deep Creek?
Yes, I am.
Great
Yeah,
range.
I think the question, and maybe we could just replace that with the safety maintenance or construction applied for grants. Yeah, I think you could just add a question. Does your range have personnel on site? And it could be, or is it staffed? Maybe that's the question. Does the range have staffing and is it full-time, part-time, or volunteer? paid full-time, paid part-time, or volunteer.
What what is that going to help you decide, I guess? I'm just wondering what that
I think
question
a
will.
cost component, if they're an established range. So for instance, if there is a maintenance requirement, if they pay somebody to do that, if it's a volunteer only, um,
Hmm. So we
I'm
want some sort of staffing question. So what I can do also is um, we can work with you, Seth, on finessing these questions and then get them to our human dimensions guy and have him maybe go through this um, and wordsmith better, and then I can get this out to everybody. So right now, unless you have exact wording on the staffing question, I could just put a placeholder. What would you
Yeah, and
like?
maybe that's a broader question. Maybe there's if what we're trying to get at is a cost component, then maybe that could be broadened to um which areas are you ex or where do you have expenditures as a club? And that could get to across the board. It could be, competition costs, hosting, it could be staffing, it could be maintenance. Um, uh, yeah, I think we could think about that. I'm gonna go through all these questions and current try and, look at them from the other side as well. But if the idea is to get a cost component, then we could put maintenance, staffing, hosting, could all sort of fall under that same question.
I think this is a question, Seth, that is going to cause a lot of ears to perk up and ask, why are you asking me that question? Does that really help answer where you're going here? Are you getting too much into
Too far in the
my
weeds.
business?
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
and you might turn some people off. And so just keep that in mind. I think
Yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe your human dimensions people can tell us if we're tripping that wire,
I was
well,
Daryl.
that's
thinking
what
it
I was
would fit
wondering,
into
Mitch.
the funding construction upgrades and maintenance or receive public funding. I want the tone of this to be we are trying to spend more money on ranges. We're trying to make sure that we're meeting the need of shooters in the industry. And there's potentially money to help do that if needed. So if you can help us show us the direction we need to go. And I think if we can keep that tone and not be sort of a government survey of tell us what you're doing, and it's more of a how can we help you, or where would you like funding if you had a wish list, where would you like to apply this to? I think that will help us see the right direction. So I might give that some thought, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would urge that, frankly. I think we put a whole lot of stuff down here. We got what, 15 questions or plus 15 to 20 questions. We're going to
yeah,
get to the point where people aren't going to take the time to do it. And then somebody like yourself, Seth, needs to just sort of sit back and very quietly ask for each one of these questions, how does it fit with what we talked about in that first paragraph?
yep,
And make sure we're comfortable. And if not, I mean, there can be follow-up information collections down the road if we get into this further. But this is just that opening salvo of getting information together so that we can make recommendations on how best to move forward on range
yeah,
development, improvement, expansion, that sort of thing.
yeah, I'm
yeah,
with you, Mitch, on that. Just going back to the charter again, the task force is asked to, assess and then identify needs and then develop a mechanism on how to get there. So, I don't know if you need to, basically trust the ranges saying these are our needs, rather than what are you spending your money on right now? And I'm thinking that might be a little overstep there, and they might feel it's an overstep. We're telling you what we need, and this is why. Um, maybe
yeah.
that's
Well,
just
and
the
I think
assessment.
I think in that vein, looking at things like number 11, um, maybe that's not relevant to what we need to know. How does your club currently fund construction? Is that something that really matters to us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I almost feel like we could just nix number 11 completely because it doesn't really change. Like, if they're privately funded or state funded, it doesn't really matter. I think we can get at that same question with, if we get rid of that number 14, would your range be interested in expanding, or have you looked to expand if funding or infrastructure were available?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a better way of asking that question of,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I
The
think,
only thing I would add to what Deb said is one of the other things that I see us being charged to do is identify gaps in opportunity
Mm-hmm.
across the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the questions we've got here will do that. And I would feel very comfortable, Seth, with having you and Deb sit down and go through each one of these questions and ask that hard question. Does it apply to the charter? And if not, nix it.
yeah, and in that light, number 12, we may want to change that to has your facility applied for and not received public funding might be a better way of asking that question because if it really doesn't, and then that's a simple, hey, we've tried to get funding and we couldn't get it, tells you that they're asking for it. We have a list of all the clubs that have. That might be easier. And then we could even, I mean, if they want to, if yes, you can describe, but
I concur, Seth. I think that's a better way of stating this. Have you applied and not received public funding? And on that line, how are we going to determine which the list of clubs? Do we have a list of every gun club in Montana?
we have a lot of them, I believe. We talked about that a little bit the last meeting. I think it basically comes down to once we're finished with this, we're going to send it out to every club that we know, and then it'll be on us to sort of spread the word. I know of some private clubs, and, I think we all have a circle of people we run in, and then we're just going to try and get the word out. Everyone mostly knows any legitimate club in their region, and we'll just try and reach out to all of them and get them to fill the survey out.
Yeah, we've
Can,
got at FWP, we've got a pretty good start on the list of clubs, but it is going to take a handful of our staff making phone calls and trying, because these are mostly volunteer organizations, the members turnover, so it will involve quite a few phone calls as well to track down these clubs.
And I assume when we're saying clubs, we're also talking about clubs and ranges, right?
Right. Yeah,
yes.
well, if they're a non-established, if there's not a charter, there's no one to talk to as a representative. It's kind of, I mean, then it kind of falls into, if you go out and you shoot at the gravel pit, there's no one to fill out a survey about. It has to be a represented entity, is maybe the way to say that.
Yeah, when I said round ranges, I was thinking commercial
Yeah.
endeavors like, the local range here in Helena and the
Yeah,
indoor
I
range and
think
all that.
represented entity is maybe the best way because I know some people that have built private ranges and they allow people to shoot on them. If that's the, direction we want to go, I would still like for them to say, hey, here's who uses my range and I'm providing a service because it is available. Um, and then we can get the other side of things from from the individuals. So
I'm gonna suggest that maybe we go through these last few because we're gonna run out of time for that second survey.
okay.
Um, and my question, and this was from me, um, my question on number 17 was what is the relevance of this one to the task force job? And I'm not challenging you because don't think there is one. I just wanted you to explain this because I wasn't clear on this. If there's a
So
relevance here.
what I was trying to get at with the last three was essentially, um, if there's not public land to shoot on or it's closed, do people have an option to shoot somewhere else? Or are they forced into using your range? And so you
Okay.
think somewhere like Bozeman where, or I mean, we all have spots where people go shoot. If those get closed down or there's a lot of them available, that's going to change from the club's perspective, how many people are forced to utilize the range versus choose to utilize the range. And I was trying to get at if there's a population that's being served currently by sort of a non-traditional range, but they have a place to shoot. If the clubs know that, or there's a sentiment for or against that, then that helps frame that area to us of it's a served area, but it, as to Senator Curdy's point, we lost our, yeah, we're served, but there's nowhere else to shoot trap. And so if the public land where everyone shoots trap for fun goes away, now those people don't have a place to shoot.
Hmm. Okay.
So I was trying to get an idea of sort of a percentage or a sentiment, and the ranges kind of will know that, like, oh yeah, I got to shoot at the range, but I also go shoot at, these other areas. I think we've all faced ranges that have been shut down for various reasons, and this seemed like a way of maybe getting some of that information.
Okay.
Same thing with number 18. If we can get an idea of, yeah, everyone's local and they live within, 15, 20 miles, or no, people are members and they drive 30 miles plus. I think we could probably expand that. 30 could maybe be 50. Um, do your members or just trying to get an idea of scope of service. If someone has for instance, if someone has a long distance range and they say people drive 150 miles to use it, that's pretty useful information to know that that's an in-demand facility. But I'm open to other ways to try and get at that, or maybe we don't need that information here. Um,
Thoughts from other members?
Uh, well, Senator Curdy's backyard is a range I go to uh, probably a dozen times a year, and I drive 4 hours because it is a long range facility and a silhouette facility. And so uh, I think that's valuable information to know.
and we can get that on the individual side too, but I don't know. Does anyone think that that's not worth asking? I think with these surveys, I don't know how SurveyMonkey sets it up or whoever we're going to use, but I would be fine if people just, like the unsure, hey, I don't know, click, I don't know. If they're like, yeah, if there's a sentiment, then we can capture it. It seemed like it was a fairly low risk question.
I agree, Seth. I think this is a good question for this side, but I think the better information might come from the other survey, but nothing, no problem with putting it here, I don't think, other than just the amount of questions.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that. Maybe yeah, we could maybe reword that. I think it's fairly clear. I think that's where if people are like, yeah, ranges have been closing and people are forced to go here, that's kind of what I was getting at. So I do think we probably should make the long distance. I mean, 30 miles is not really long distance in Montana. That's across the valley. So that should probably be at least 50.
Might be worth adding to each one of these questions the opportunity for a comment, a little box that gives you, 100 characters to put a little comment down.
Yeah, I mean, so like we did on some of them,
Yeah.
you know, maybe an other with a fill in the box.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of survey monkeys that have a yes, no, and a comment section that you can, if you want to, you can just say yes and go on, or you can say yes and elaborate.
Yeah,
So,
that I tried to catch that with 20 at the end. Just if
mhm,
there's anything else that people feel like they wanted to say and didn't have, they could add it.
right.
So, everybody, a question. Does PR money, can it be used for access, actually road maintenance and the like to a shooting facility?
I would think so. I think shooting range, I mean, it probably depends somewhat on the specifics of if you're building a 20-mile road to go to a range, that might be stretching it, but if it's considered necessary or if it increases access to shooting, I think if you can make that argument, then I think it would apply.
Okay.
The way that we at FWP, I can chime in on this one. So we've got our FWP ranges that we use our PR funding for. So FWP would need to have an interest in the road. So it either need to be on the range or FWP would need to have some kind of easement over the road.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add to Renee. You know, if it's, for instance, a county road going to a range that really isn't eligible, it would be a road within the range.
Gotcha. Okay. 50, 19, it was another one I was trying to get at if I missed something. What's the most important investment needed to support shooting facilities in Montana? Just trying to get at if somebody had this is what we really need, this is what I think we should have. It gives them kind of a chance, and then 20 is just a catch-all for.
I think 19 is one of the more important questions on the list.
Yeah, and we could potentially move that closer to the front if we wanted to front load that before somebody gets through, all these questions and is sort of fatigued or, it obviously we're putting a lot more thought into it than if someone's just going like, oh, I'll check a few boxes and get to the end. It's a little easier, but we could definitely move that towards the front.
Something for you all to consider when thinking about survey flow and the order is typically you want to start broader. And so it might make sense to move this one up and then you narrow down the focus and then you typically put the demographic questions at the very end.
Okay. Well, I
That's
would
a
be good with moving that either near the front or to the front, just to start this off with what do you think's the biggest need? Give people a little bit of time. I think if we look at, and we can rearrange any of these really, I think that's going to be part of the public relations people are probably better at that have done surveys and there's a science to it. So I would be
Okay.
good with moving that up to the front.
So I'm going to ask permission here. Can Seth, and maybe with help from myself and Sam or Renee, go through this and then clean it all up and get it back out to you guys? Do you trust us to do that for you?
absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that. And hopefully we could turn it around pretty quick and then we would get it in front of our human dimensions staff here, just to see if, we're missing anything on any of the questions or we're not getting at where we need to get. But this should be, a quick turnaround for me anyway. I'll be able to get through this pretty quickly. Seth, do you think we can turn this around in a week?
Oh yeah. Yep. Easily.
Okay. All right. All right. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing this screen, and we'll move on to the individual shooter survey. Let me make sure okay.
I think the header on this one should be, do you want more places to shoot? Here's your chance.
I think this is the right one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do you want to go ahead and walk us through this one?
Yep. So I think this one's a little simpler in general because it's aimed more at your general shooter, somebody that would like somewhere to go shoot all the way up to competition. And it's what I really tried to do was get at how much you're shooting, where you're shooting, what you're shooting, and then, any other information that I think is relevant. So I think to start off, how serious are you? Are you kind of, I shoot occasionally, I shoot a lot, I almost never shoot. Um, and then getting to, what kind of shooting are we looking at? Rifle, handgun, training. Some of this, I think we could change into, for instance, the one I think we may want to add to number two is some sort of, I don't know, you could call it tactical training or self-defense or, you know, I don't want to, I'm not trying to get it like, the anti-government militia, go way off into the weeds somewhere, but there's a lot of people that are just, they carry concealed or whatever, and they just train for it, which as they should. So I didn't know if there was a way of asking that question that really matters. I think if you're saying handgun pistol shooting, it kind of applies. So I shoot a lot and I don't take offense to certain terms, but people that maybe don't shoot as much might see it differently. So I figured I would just get some feedback on if you think this encompasses the types of shooting you think are out there, or if we should get more specific.
Well, Seth, since smokeless powder is only a passing fad, you probably should include. Oh, I'm just
We could definitely put, I thought about that, black powder. So we could certainly add black powder to that.
no. It's that's not necessary
Or
because
muzzle loader, because that is becoming, that I thought about the muzzle loader and that sort of falls under hunting related practice. And if you're shooting, black competition, black powder competition would still be competition shooting. So I didn't break that out. We certainly could. I think it would fall under rifle or competition or hunting. So
it does. I was just I had a chance
I
to pick
did think
this
about
up.
you, John.
Yeah.
All right. Is everyone good with that being encompassing enough, or feel like I missed anything?
The only
Okay.
one I would add is back on the archery again, uh, archery static and archery walking
Okay.
or walk through ranges.
So maybe we could do target archery and 3D archery, maybe. Do you think
Yeah,
that
that probably would capture it. I
breaks it
think
out enough?
oftentimes the walk through ranges are not necessarily 3D; they're just walk through. But yeah, that captures it. Archery static and archery. I'd say archery walk through slash 3D.
Yeah. Or we could do static and then 3D or field.
Yeah, yeah, that'd capture. That'd give people. They know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the archers have got it. All right. Um, and we can play with the sectioning and whatever. I kind of had it broken out to try and get it organized in my head. Um, Established shooting range, we could probably break that out into public, private. I think that's kind of the same. Uh, if we wanted to break that up into membership or non-member, maybe something along those lines. Kind of open to suggestions on that one.
Just mean another box, right?
Yeah. It could be a drop down potentially. A lot of times it's, if you select yes or, and then you got public or private. So maybe we could do it that way. Establish shooting range.
Yeah.
The public-private thing gets kind of interesting because it's if you're an established range, are you a public range or are you a private range? Maybe it could be member or non-member driven, membership driven, non-membership driven,
Well,
or established shooting range, and then maybe the drop down is does it require membership? Or yeah, I'm not really sure how to get at that. This was for me was more aimed at where are people going to shoot. I figured most of your ranges are going to be sort of an established range.
don't you cover that in question number 4?
Mostly, I think if you, I mean, unless people were checking boxes, we could probably draw an inference through that.
Yeah, I think you're right. You don't need to do anything to 3 because you got it in 4.
Okay. I think with 5, I probably want to expand those to be a little bit larger. So maybe we do, less than 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, more than 100 or something like that. Maybe those are too big, but maybe not. I think that kind of gives us a good range. I don't think there's really anyone in Montana that's lucky enough to drive less than 15 minutes to get to a range, or 15 miles, I should say.
I like that.
There's a few of us, but that kind of gives us an idea of is it local? Is it, how far are people really willing to travel is what I'm trying to get at. Uh, 5, 6. I was trying to get at some of the, if you're not shooting at ranges, what are some of the issues? I'm good with changing any of these. Some of them are kind of redundant. Lack of a safe backstop is kind of a safety concern. Um, just depends on how specific you want to be.
I think you've covered it.
It really gives people a chance to sort of pick your flavor. Um, if we're good with that.
Fire concerns might be a
Yeah, we could add fire to that. Number 6. I mean, that could fall under safety, but
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's important.
And you could also add hostility from adjacent landowners.
yeah. How would you phrase that?
I would say landowner issues, adjacent landowner issues.
Adjacent landowner issues. I agree.
Well, and I think you could broaden that though. I'm just thinking of there's a place up the road where people shoot, and it's up in Jewel Basin, and it's on the road to a bunch of walking trails. And so you've got tourists, for lack of a better word, or people that maybe aren't from the area and they're driving up a dirt road, and then there's, a bunch of rednecks at the side of the road shooting into a hill. Like, are there interactions there between people where it feels and, there you go. I like the conflicts. I think that would probably do it. You could do landowner issues, but that's what I was trying to get at with if it's a conflict. I guess if it's not other recreational users.
I like that.
Yeah. That pretty much covers it.
And there's a other, so if someone's got a be in their bonnet, they can fill it in and say, actually, this is my problem. 7 was just trying to get a litmus test of yes, no, maybe. Um, Once again, 8 kind of gets to, what are people's inhibitions? What could we help fix potentially to make shooting easier, more convenient, or accessible? Everybody good with 8? Anything you see or
Mhm.
think we missed on that?
I think you got it.
Do we have some, I know that we do have some shooting ranges that are at capacity, meaning they're not taking on any more members. Is that covered with your list?
I think it would. I think that could come
Overcrowding.
out. Maybe that could be a question that goes back to the shooting ranges. Are you accepting new membership? If we could put that back on the ranges, some of them don't. Or maybe is there a waiting list for membership? That might be a good question, I think, to add. Because I do know there are some ranges. I think the one in Laurel that I belong to had a waiting list of people to get on it. So maybe that's a good question. Does your club have a wait list for membership? That's a good catch. All right, opportunities. This is the one where I think I'm trying to get at where people want. Um, what do you want to see? What do you, even people that have access? And I think we can set this up in SurveyMonkey to figure out um, to weight this or to set up if people are saying that they have one thing, if it's the same person that's filling it out, it should give a weighting to the type of shooting that they're doing versus what they feel like they have access to versus what they want. I think we can play around with how we ask those questions to maybe get like a heat map style of here's how many people are saying they're shooting this that are also cross-referenced with saying they want to have the ability to shoot this or that. So if you had
Seth, you
people
just
that
said exactly what I was thinking was like a heat map of areas for sure. I
okay.
think we could get at that.
And I think even, especially in the day of AI, it's pretty easy just to feed this in and say, here's what I want overlaid. I want to know, cross-reference this desire heat map style. Show me where the need is with the desire with whatever. And I think it can spit that out pretty easily.
Are we collecting location information about the person filling us out?
Yep. Yep. That comes towards the end.
Okay.
So yeah, I kind of did it basically the same thing. I think we could do on number 9, the archer ranges. You got to break that out. I think everything else is probably pretty good. Number 9, I had suppressor friendly facilities. We may want to, um, I kind of put that in there to see if it almost, I think in this day and age is the inverse. If it's a muzzle brake friendly facility, most people have less of a problem with people shooting suppressors than they do shooting big magnums with muzzle brakes that are super loud. Um, so I don't know. I was gonna say noise suppression. I think it's kind of the inverse, or maybe that could be uh, large caliber, full auto, something along those lines. Maybe it's regulated firearms, or I don't know. I don't think that's going to be a big draw for a lot of people, but I kind of wanted that to be on there. So I don't know
Yeah.
what your guys' feelings are. Yeah, I mean, a lot of ranges won't let you shoot a 50 cal or a full auto, or there's kind of a regulation against it. That could all fall into the other as well. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Any changes here? Thoughts?
Leave it be.
Okay. I think we should change the suppressor friendly because I worded that in inverse. Um, I think large caliber or full auto friendly. See what we get. I don't know if that'll be a thing or not, but
Okay.
um Number 10 was kind of I think generally if it's a new or improved facility, everyone would be more likely to use it. So I don't know if that's getting at the heart of, kind of what I was trying to get at, which is would you utilize more facilities? Do you feel like your need is met? That's probably going to be everybody. I don't know if that's even a needed question.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much if someone does anything other than very likely, I wouldn't imagine where they're coming from, but yeah.
And maybe what the question should be is if newer used facilities were available, how would this affect the amount of shooting or the amount of how
Would
likely
you,
you would be to engage in these, whatever, to where if I had more facilities or better ones, then I would probably shoot more.
yeah,
It's
maybe
kind of
that's the
captured
question
in,
is, would you shoot more if you had new, improved, or more localized facilities?
I didn't even realize she was here. I thought she'd gone.
yeah, I think, so maybe we could word that if newer improved facilities were available, how likely
Would it increase your shooting experience?
got to be some good wordage for that.
Sounds like we've almost circled back around to what you've got there, Seth.
I know.
The key is we want to know if they would increase their amount of shooting if they had more facility.
Maybe if we say if newer used facilities were available, um, yeah, I don't know.
Would it would it increase your range use?
Yeah, I think you could, yeah, I don't know how to word that.
Let's think
You
about
guys
that.
think that that's a necessary question in light of everything else?
Well, you're trying to cater to shooters and give more shooters more opportunities and also engage new shooters. So I don't think it's not an important question, but what we could do is we could work with Mike Lewis to see
So maybe we could phrase
if
it,
there's a way to, yeah, I could ask Mike to see if there's a way he would recommend phrasing this one to get at what you guys are needing.
maybe we could just say, would your shooting participation increase? So if new or used facilities were available, would your shooting participation increase? Yes, significantly, yes, somewhat, likely, unlikely. Kind of I would shoot more often. I would, you know, something along those lines. I think the human dimension people could maybe answer that better, but I think shooting participation, um, maybe we could kind of pencil that in for, shooting participation, and then we can sort of reword that. Would your shooting participation increase, or how likely would it be for your shooting participation to increase? I guess then we could use the same. If we use likely in the question, then we could still use it. So how likely would it be that your shooting participation would increase?
The only thing I would add to that is say were available and more convenient to you. Somebody can now drive only 50 miles, and instead of having to drive 150, would they shoot more?
Yep. We'll probably have to go through and clean up the wording, or I think once we get to the survey side, there's probably better ways of asking this or optimized way of asking for the survey questions too, but I think that gets to what we're asking. All right, 11. This kind of touches on this as well of looking for you know, what would improve your experience, which is, um, I tried to get a good cross section of, you know, better facilities, nicer facilities, more specific facilities. The only thing on the questions, and this might come back to the survey, is obviously all of these would probably improve your shooting experience to some degree. I think what we're trying to get to is making it a measurable or a decision making process. So maybe that's not the best way of asking that.
How do you get to the question of family friendly and shooting novice friendly, I guess? So many people are intimidated to go to some of these ranges because they really are trying to learn and sometimes they get preached to.
Yeah, that's it's probably a good way. I guess maybe, I mean, you could just put that new shooter friendly, novice friendly, um, not intimidating, but probably new shooter friendly is maybe the best way of saying that.
Yeah.
Somebody that hasn't shot much might check that box. I wouldn't, so maybe that gives us the information we need.
And to match the language in our other survey, you could use which amenities would improve your shooting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the reason I used improvements is because a lot of these would fall under something that would be an improvement, like if it was a better target or a longer distance or better infrastructure. That, I mean, I think either word kind of works, but we could keep them cohesive.
I could just put new or additional amenities,
Yeah.
just to identify that it's a change. Anything else on that one?
I think I think if we reword the question, I'm trying to play with a couple different. Maybe we could phrase it, which facility or, amenity infrastructure improvement, whatever, would be most likely to increase your use of shooting facilities. And you could probably reword that, increased likelihood or whatever, but I think that gets to the heart of it. Okay, 12. This is kind of getting back to,
Hey, Seth,
yep.
before we move on, let's go back to 11. I think we need to, um, we just left new shooter friendly. Why don't you maybe put new shooter friendly support or something like that that you're,
Okay.
or something related to that. I mean, you've got to show that you're looking out for these folks and want to improve their experience.
Yeah, maybe welcoming or
Yeah.
yeah, new shooter support. Yeah, we can play with that. That helps
Okay.
get us to what you're looking for.
Yep. It's fine.
All right. 12 was kind of a simple. Do you currently participate in organized shooting events or competitions? I think that's getting back to what types of shooting people are doing, if you're just sort of casual or if you're willing to travel and compete. I thought about having a potentially a follow-on, and maybe we can just do a drop down on if it's yes, it could be what level, and it could be, state, regional, national, something along those lines. And you could probably do, local, state, regional, national. If I don't know if that's what we used on the other one, but that kind of breaks it out for, check the box. Right. 13, I think we could definitely add stuff to it. This was kind of, I was trying to get an overview of trying to kind of hit different segments of people that might be wanting to shoot. Yeah, I think having an other with a, fill in the blank would be good.
Either you're hitting it out of the park, Seth, or everybody's getting into that afternoon
I think,
rut
yeah,
here.
maybe you should take a coffee break here. I don't know. I try to make the
Okay.
harder ones up front. The rest of them are all pretty straightforward, I think, as we get rolling. So this goes back to the trying to figure out where people are. Um, I tried to do this, asking people where they're located was my first thought on how to do this. And then, but that may or may not be as important for where they would like to go to shoot. And I think where they would like to go is probably more important than where they are from a shooter perspective. Um, yeah, and some of these I fat fingered them. So
Seth, I don't know that I would. I think the person responding to this survey is not necessarily uh, a knowledgeable of all the regions, and there's really no reason to tie this to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The survey itself. I'm thinking if you know where the person is and ask them how far they would be willing to travel, that sort of gets you to the same thing. I think we start confusing people when we start saying, okay, what region am I in? Let's see, if I'm in White Sulphur Springs, am I in the Bozeman region or am I in the Great Falls region? And them having to know where those regional boundaries are and all that kind of stuff. I just think you throw a
okay.
bit of confusion in here. And really what you're looking for, in my opinion, is where are you? And how far are you willing to go? And
So we could probably break this out. I mean, if you look at the list, you've got Kalispell, Missoula, Great Falls, Glasgow, Billings, Miles City, Lewistown, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you could do Glendive instead of Miles City or something. But I think if you can find it's basically Northwest, maybe Missoula becomes Hamilton, or, people will know where it is to try and figure out. Maybe we can just do Northwest, Southwest, Central, we could also do the traveling thing. How far are you willing to travel? I think I asked the question of how far do you typically travel? Maybe that question could be how far are you willing to travel? Um, or what you feel is, I mean, if it's what you typically travel, maybe, I mean, I guess that's an indication of what you're willing to do if you're doing it typically.
But I guess
Maybe
if
that,
you're wanting to
Seth,
create one of those hot maps that you talk about, if you ask a person to put their zip code in, and you then ask them how far they're willing to travel,
that should,
you could build that map. Then you could say we have cold spots where there's absolutely no availability
mhm.
when you compare that to the ranges for these particular areas.
yeah, I would be fine with doing a zip code or region, whatever. I mean, I'm sure SurveyMonkey can do heat maps by zip code. It might even be easier. I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, I'm not totally sure about SurveyMonkey's capability on the mapping side. So just wanted to make sure that I haven't done that before.
No, SurveyMonkey cannot, but we'll be taking the data to do it. I was already messaging with Sam to see what his GIS capabilities were because, yeah, we're gonna have to actually do this by hand. But it's not that difficult. It's just, we have to rely on other FWP staff to
Yeah, we
help
got to
us.
make sure we have the resources to be able to do
Yeah.
that. Yep.
Yep.
So would it make more sense to kind of keep the cities to pick, five or six regions and then just have it's easy if someone says, if you live in Whitefish or Libby, you're going to pick Kalispell. If you live in, Hamilton, you're going to pick Missoula. If you're anywhere in sort of north central Montana, it's Great Falls. So as long as we pick sort of cities that fill those regions, I don't know if
Seth, I don't know that that's going to make it any easier or harder. I mean, we're still going to have to rely on our GIS staff to help us with this.
okay.
So, I honestly think, because your question 16 gets basically at what you just said. But I think, Mitch's suggestion is a good one as well, is just what's your zip code and how far are you willing to travel? And that, you know, we're going to have to develop some sort of map based on this data anyway to show you where the holes are. And I think that's probably the cleanest, is what Mitch suggested.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be fine. So basically we could go from, well, all of section 8 gets distilled down to, where do you live and how far are you willing to travel?
Hmm.
The one question I was trying to get at with the where you would like to see,
Hmm.
because I don't think that those, if where you are and how far you're willing to travel gets to that of if there's a destination and maybe that's a follow-on, if there was a destination facility, where would you want that to be? Because if we get 5,000 respondents and 2,000 of them say, Kalispell because of Glacier Park, or they say Billings, then that helps us determine if we're looking at a larger facility, where is that need or desire being met, or would it be met best, is what I was trying to get at, because we don't have that information, I think, from the shooting ranges.
Well, I think we're on the same page here, Seth. There's two questions you're trying to get from these shooters, these Montana-based shooters that are responding. It's where do you want to go shoot? And then a heavier question to ask them is that do you think a destination shooting uh, facility, but you'd have to define that, is a good thing for Montana? And if so, where? Uh, I think that's two different questions and good ones that we need to get to, because that's what we're being challenged to do here, is try to decide whether we spend all of our money on smaller ranges that are within 30 miles of every shooter in Montana, or do we set some aside for a destination facility?
So maybe the way that we phrase this is and it doesn't necessarily matter. I think we could probably cross-reference, but maybe the way that we say this is if Montana was to build a best in class facility for, your desired shooting sport, what region would you place that in? Or something to that effect.
That sounds good.
Or premier, I'm trying to think of what somebody might, of shooting sports complex. Maybe, complex usually works for people.
Yeah.
Maybe a premier or shooting sports. I think shooting sports complex, most people know kind of what that means. I can go there and do whatever. It's sporting clays or it's long range or it's
Yep. And I would go to I guess for choices there, I would hit the major airports. So, you know, Kalispell, Missoula, Billings, Great Falls, Bozeman, and then other. You know,
you.
somebody's going to put plenty of wood in there.
Somebody's going to say Libby, but it's going to
Yeah.
happen. I do think that it's going to end up being on the western side because, especially with Cody having a facility and the proximity to the largest populations really is Missoula kind of area because you're more proximate to Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, which is the largest, and or if you come up from Boise, anywhere down south, I mean, that's just where the population center is going to be. But it would be
I
good to
don't.
get that information.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think that's that's too deep for most people that will be responding to the survey.
No, I agree. It's good to get both reference points.
Yeah, but we get the input anyway. And this might be a good question for the range for the clubs and ranges too.
Yeah, how do you get them? Yeah, that'll be another one. Obviously, they're gonna all probably want to build it where they are.
Mhm. Or they're going to see it as competition for where they're at.
All right, so I think that probably takes care of that section. Section 9 was the last one. Um, kind of final thoughts. Single most important improvement needed to support shooters in Montana. That's a pretty broad statement, but I think that's where we might start to get some trends. Um, 18 we could potentially reword. I think 17 kind of is self-explanatory and fills that gap. 18 I wasn't sure how to get to this. It's basically aimed at tell us what we need to know about access. So it's more aimed at specifics versus, just what you would like to have, I guess.
I
Kind of
think they're
open.
both good ones to ask, just so because you never know what nugget of good information will come out.
The question I have with 18 is is it easy enough to cross-reference where they say they were in the survey to draw that inference, or would we need them to would 18 fit with where are you as a two-part question of where are you and is there anything you would like people to know about your area, or is it easy enough? And this is, I guess I can handle this on the survey side too, but is that easy enough to do in a survey, or would we want to link those?
Yeah, we can, in SurveyMonkey, we can link all of our answers to, or all the questions to each other. So that's the easy part. The harder part is in any open-ended answer, we don't know
How
how
do you
many of the,
sort those?
yeah, we just don't know how many we're going to get, and right now the only person fully staffing this task force is me, and then Sam in some part too. So, open-ended answers are really hard to I guess summarize and assess. We really need to. It's all manual, so I'm just letting you know that.
I've got
Yeah.
a thought there, Deb. So we've been
Uh-huh.
using Perplexity, an
Okay. Yeah.
AI tool, and that's
Yep.
been really
Yep.
helpful. So I think what we would do is this is what you guys can expect to get back. All of the non-fill in the blank questions, you'll get some type of summary, likely a graph or a chart showing the responses. And then
Mm-hmm.
for the open-ended questions, we can run it through Perplexity. So it can give us the themes. We can ask it specific questions if you all come up with those questions. So I think we could do that pretty quickly.
Okay. Good. That's new to me.
Yeah, I was thinking we would probably read through, and Perplexity would work great because it gives you, it's a keyword style sorting of, these is what most people said along this line. They all wanted this or that. But then we could also read through, if we were looking for more specifics and read the answers. So, okie
So
doke.
again, with this survey, I guess the same question is that Seth and myself and Sam and maybe Renee can finesse this, get it close, and get it to our human dimensions guy, and then turn it around back to you guys within a week and see what you guys think on what we came up with.
Looks good. Sounds
Okay,
good to me.
and then I'd love if you guys would allow, we have 4 people watching right now, and if we could allow them to, let me stop sharing here quickly. If we could have some public comment, if anybody's willing to share their thoughts, is that okay to do that right now?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll ask if there's anybody watching. We have 4 people. One is an FWP employee, but if we have anybody from the public who wishes to share their thoughts or comment to the task force subcommittee, please raise your hand and I will allow you to talk. One more time, if there's anybody in the public that wishes to share their thoughts or provide comments, please raise your hand. And I'm not seeing any. So I guess we'll move on. And the last thing is, I don't want to hold you guys longer. But if you had any thoughts on what I can share with the PR subcommittee on Thursday, I'd like to share, obviously, drafts of these surveys. So either in their present form or maybe we can get them close by Thursday. But is there anything you'd like me to let them know and carry your message to them in terms of where you'd like to see these surveys be sent or distributed? Obviously, you guys are going to have a big say in that as well as the other committee, but I didn't know if there's anything you wanted me to share.
I think it'd be good to get them whatever drafts we have. If you can send over that link too, I'll probably join that meeting,
Okay, we'll do.
even if it's just for this portion of it.
Okay.
It would be good to get their feedback, the broader committee on this, especially once we've kind of distilled it. I'm sure we'll have a few changes.
Okay. I'm not seeing or hearing anything. Anything else for the good of the order before I turn this over to Seth for one last thank you? Okay. Well, Seth, do you have anything else you'd like to say or share here?
Nope, I just appreciate everyone's 2 hours and feedback. And if there's anything else, we'll be working on this and try and get it out. If anything else pops up, just send an email, I guess, to the group and we'll take it into consideration. Try and get it moving quickly.
This is a great
Thank you
first
so much.
start. Great
Yeah,
first.
thank you so much, everybody. This was a great meeting. I appreciate it.
Seth, you did a great job, and everybody else on all the work ahead stuff. Made it easy.
Everyone have a good week.
All
Thank
right,
you.
you too. Seth, I'll be in touch.
Thanks
Sounds
all.
good. Thanks,
Bye.
Ed.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.